live here in Foley, Minnesota with my wife. We have 5 children. We bought the farm about 35 years ago. I own 240 acres. I farm about 400 acres of row crop. I have a poultry barn. I have beef cattle. I run 50-50 rotation, corn and soybeans. I like the rotation. I like the 50-50. Seem to have better efficiency and it's better for the soil biology in my opinion. Through the NRCS, I have implemented strip till. I've implemented intensive grazing. I've put up a manure stacking slab, which I use for my poultry litter, and I'm a water quality certified farm. My 2 big tractors are 120 and 125 PTO horse, which is a little more than I need. I started strip till about 12 years ago, did some investigating, found out that I could get some help through NRCS to try this because it was kind of a new technology in this area. I found a used strip till machine in Iowa, dismantled it and rebuilt it. It was a 3-point mounted machine. I built it so it was semi-mounted, and I found an old Gandy unit so I could put fertilizer in the row, and spent that winter building my strip till machine so it was exactly the way I felt I wanted it to be. There was funding through NRCS to help offset some of the costs getting started. I guess I took it from there and I've never looked back. It's, I think, probably been one of the best investments I've made in my farming career. The benefits to strip till are pretty huge. First of all, the labor and fuel savings are pretty impressive. I run an 8-row machine, so a 20-foot strip. I use about a half a gallon an acre for my tillage, and I use another half a gallon to plant. I can strip 100 acres a day. I can plant close to 100 acres a day with my chores. If I see bad weather coming, I can strip and plant about 40 acres in a day by myself. I have no labor, so I'm saving on labor. I place my nutrients right in the row in my band, so they get an opportunity to melt and blend with the soil a little better before I plant, so I feel like I get a little more efficiency with my nutrients. Then I band liquid right on the seed with my planter, so I get a little quicker response for a pop. I've had tremendous results. I have better yields than I had with conventional tillage. Could be that I've learned a little bit. I certainly hope I have. After you do it enough years, you should learn. I've been really happy with it. Takes a few years, you start to see the soil biology change. It almost sounds like voodoo or witchcraft, but it does change. When you start to see the soil biology activity pick up, you really start to notice an efficiency in your nutrient usage, improvement in your manure utilization. It's a real fun process to actually watch and be part of. There are things you learn that you need to do. I adjust down pressure. There's been times where I'll run too much down pressure. Not very efficient to work in mud, so you have to learn patience. When everybody else is out racing, be the first one in the field, you have to learn to just enjoy a cup of coffee and wait it out. When conditions are right, it works fantastic. When it's muddy, stay home. We've all learned that. We should always do that. Not an easy one to implement. You just have to. Probably the biggest challenge with getting started in strip till is a lack of used equipment. For a small farmer starting out, to find a used piece of equipment is very tough. It really helps if you worked in manufacturing before so you can do some of your own fabrication. That's a huge asset. I kind of had a vision of what I wanted to build. I built my own toolbar, and I have a neighbor that's a very good welder. So between the 2 of us, he helped me weld together the frame. And then I bolted the Don units to it and I put it together, and I've been very happy with it. I actually I've done very little modification since I built it. The Gandy unit will hold 3 ton. It's an air cart, so I carry my fertilizer in there. I put a second set of hoses on the back so I can actually use this for cover crop. If I switch out the metering units, I can do cover crops by putting it right into the back end of the unit. So all I have to do is move this hose from this location, which incorporates it for my fertilizer, to this back location, which puts it in the mixing wheel, and I can use it for a seeder. So I've used it actually for seeding cover crop. Last year I used it. So the way a down unit works, they have a lead coulter to cut the trash whips to clear from the strip, and then a double set of pitched coulters to build the berm, and gauge wheel for depth. And on that gauge wheel there's just some fins. Of course, they've made modifications. Their newer units are much nicer. But I went and added the hydraulic downforce so I can apply, or if the soil's too soft, I can actually put a negative pressure on so that I can control the units very efficiently and keep them working at an even depth. Fertilizer is controlled with a Gandy with a Raven on-off switch, so I can set my rate and just apply my fertilizer as I go. In central Minnesota, we do not like shanks. I have rocks, and shanks invite them to the surface, and coulters tend to invite them not so much. I have the hydraulic down pressure cylinder with nitrogen canisters for cushion. It's just controlled with a regulator and a pressure gauge. You can't see it. It's just a manual adjustment. Because it's hydraulic, I can tweak it from the cab on the go. So if I come to a tougher spot, I can kind of increase the down pressure, and if I'm at a softer soil, I can reduce down pressure or add lift. When I plant, I do one pass with the stripper to put down my dry fertilizer. I put liquid fertilizer in the furrow. I run about 7 gallons of a pop-up starter, and then I spray at 10 gallons to the acre. I use flood jets. It's a very stable way to put on a broadcast herbicide. So I use one tank for herbicide, one for fertilizer, so I'm a true 2-pass operation. I just hook up to the tractor and I have everything contained in one unit. As far as weed control goes, it's not much different than conventional till, except that the weeds get a little bit of an earlier start. I put down a pre-emerge with my planter. I've had really good success with that. If I need to come back with a post-application, it's no problem. That's what we used to always do. If it holds season long, it's absolutely wonderful not to have to go back and spend another trip. With the conservation tillage, you do wind up with more of a challenge with winter annuals. Dandelions and thistles are a challenge to handle through the year. If I see winter annuals beginning to apply pressure, I get out with a fall application, and it really controls them going forward.
In 2007, 2008, Roy started his strip till project with the office through the EQIP program. We worked with him on the incentive payments with the program, and then doing the spot checks and residue checks that went along with it at that time. And then shortly after that, Roy put up a chicken barn, and he was looking to do some storage for his beef cows too, so we ended up working with Roy on a stacking slab for his beef cows, his pen pack manure, which he also utilized for manure from the chicken barn. Roy also worked on the Minnesota Ag Water Quality Certification Program. He got certified with that a couple years ago. Also done some work with Roy on some nutrient management test plots, doing side-by-side comparisons, manure application rates, commercial fertilizer rates, different rates, different timings to see what was the best fit with the strip till operation that he had.
I do apply my manure spring and fall. My stacking slab isn't big enough if I'm getting a lot of manure to hold all my manure for a year. And I don't like to be caught with more manure than I can get applied timely. By waiting and applying late in the fall, I feel that the manure gets a chance to begin breaking down ahead of time. At the same time, if I haul it in the spring, obviously the nutrients are there. I'm always a little more concerned with traffic patterns in the spring, so I prefer to get my manure hauled in the fall so that it gets into the soil profile and the frost has a chance to lighten up my compaction. As you start to generate a good soil profile, get some good soil structure, the weight of the equipment becomes less of an issue. I pay close attention to the weight I put on the field. I try to stay off the field when I don't have to be, but I have definitely seen an improvement in my soil structure. I can get on my ground long before I should be on my ground. Patience is still the best choice. If it's wet below the surface, give it another day. It's well worth the extra time. If I get timely rain, That will generally take care of all my nutrient needs, except I put a little bit of liquid right on the seed to give me that little bit of pop. If I miss a rain, if a rain is delayed by a couple of days, I can tell that I'm losing the nitrogen because when I pull my shallow soil test later and my tissue sample, invariably it'll be short, or if I get if I'm real long on rain, it'll push the nitrogen below the root structure and I'll have to come back and apply a little bit just to get the plants hustling to chase back after that nitrogen. Beyond that, surface application has worked fantastically for me.
Getting the biological life back into the soil helps incorporate your manure too, in addition to, timely rains and stuff like that. By getting that bug life in there, they're pulling the manure into the ground, they're doing some of the work for you. The combination of strip till, conservation tillage, and soil health, they all work together by reducing the amount of tillage. You're building that soil structure, you're allowing microorganisms, just the bacteria, the bug life in the ground to stay alive. They're producing nutrients, fertilizer. The water infiltration, you're not having the runoff like you would, the water soaking in versus running off on the surface.
I do see that the nutrients, the crop residue breaks down much faster now than it did at the onset. And I do believe that is associated with improved soil biology. Things are improving. My soil tests are good, but I've also spent 30 years working on a good fertility program, and consistency and purpose pays off. The soil is more firm, but more mellow. I definitely can see that. I'm applying less down pressure to get my row units in the ground than I did for the first few years. I definitely see a change in that. If I put out fence posts in the fall for the cattle, to put cattle on the corn stalks, the posts just go in much easier. All the things that physically I remember being an issue seem to have changed, and it's mostly driven by that difference in soil structure, the difference in the soil biology, I believe. I have about 70 head of cattle. We bought cattle the first year after we bought the farm. We just started with 10 head and learned a lot of things about cattle. Since then, I've retained calves. I've grown my own herd. It's a nice thing to have for children growing up, especially to give them the challenge of chores and the reward of chores. Things that a lot of kids aren't afforded the opportunity to do, we get here on the farm. The kids learned a lot of things about animal husbandry and just having responsibility. About 8 years ago, NRCS helped with the layout and the design of the paddocks for my rotational grazing. I now have 7 paddocks ranging from 2 to 7 acres. I rotate the cattle every 2 to 5 days, depending on growth conditions, depending on the season. It's been fantastic. It's made my pasture a lot more supportive for the cattle. Productivity is vastly improved, and a lot fewer areas that the cattle seem to just want to go to, and they'll just beat it black. And with the rotational grazing, they're not on it so long, they get moved to a new location. You're really able to mitigate a lot of that. I move the cattle between 2 and 5 days, depending on weather conditions and which paddocks they're in. A lot of my paddocks have natural water in them. I did plumb water out to all the paddocks. Then one year I had it freeze and break, and I've learned that it's just as simple if I leave the cattle coming to me and they can get water in the yard. The intensive grazing is a really nice asset if you have cattle, if you want cattle to be easy to work with. They learn that when they see you, you're a friend, and they follow me between paddocks like it's second nature. Managing the pasture, I do winter seeding to bring some clovers into the mix. During the winter, I have my yard set up pretty nice at home here. I fall calf, so when they're finished calving, I try to get them in the yard. I feed silage through the winter. It's fantastic for the calves. It's actually very fantastic for the pasture. Between the fall calving and the rotational grazing, I can maintain the cows much better. And in the fall, by the time I'm ready to calf, the pastures are just starting to lean out a little bit, which leans out the cattle and makes it a lot easier calving. After I have calves on the ground, I can put them to the silage. The cows milk better, the calves gain better. It's been a really good fit for me. I have 35 cows, 34 calves, and 1 bull. Through the winter, I keep my cattle in the yard. I feed them silage and hay just to maintain them, to keep them off the grasses. The cows will all go out to the pasture through the summer, get some more frame size on the heifers, and actually get frame size on the steers too, so that when I put them in the feedlot, I can bring them up to weight efficiently. The young stock I'll keep back and background them for a couple months, and then I'll put them on full feed. Anybody that I don't keep for a heifer, I feed out for market. Because this is a cement yard and with the buildings to both sides, I've done a clean water diversion project utilizing this cattle guard so that I could, for feeding silage, I can go in and out without the cattle running around the yard. It's been an excellent bridge and a cattle guard.
Rotational grazing is a great idea if you're looking to utilize the pasture that you have, get more out of it. If you've got a continuously grazed pasture, the cattle are going through, eating what they want, trampling down what they don't want. Yields really can diminish just because what they really like doesn't have a chance to come back. By breaking it up, giving the grass time to grow, it gets that root structure back, allows time for the above ground stuff to grow back, so you got a lot better yields off there and can limit the amount of supplemental feeding you have to do during the summer. And plus, by keeping that root growth in the ground, the infiltration for the rainwater, reduce some of your runoff there. Roy had existing pasture. He came to the office with interest in getting better use out of it. The plan was dividing the pasture up into 7 paddocks, 30 to 35 acres of pasture divided up in those paddocks. The interior fence was included as part of that, and then with some waters and stuff like that, and then a grazing incentive payment that went along for 3 years after everything was installed.
I built a chicken barn 11 years ago, and at the same time I put up a manure stacking slab. With the chicken barn, we have about 41,000 birds in there, and it's about 2-month rotation, 6 weeks on and 2 weeks off. For bedding stock, we use oat hulls, sunflower hulls, and some wood shavings. I actually use a housekeeper hooked up to my 8N boomer, and what that does is it lifts the cake litter off the top of the good, dry, reusable bedding. I always say it's like a manure combine. It just lifts off what would be packed and what would be just pure manure. We try to skin off as little as possible. I lift about 2 inches and it shakes the dry, reusable from that, so it only removes what's caked and is actually completely manure. And then I can remove the manure and save the dry shavings so that we replace the chicks on recycled litter, which it turns out is actually a lot healthier for the chicks. We've seen a pretty good improvement in the health of the birds that grow out since we've been using recycled litter instead of completely replacing with all new shavings. And obviously it's a cost savings because we're not buying oat hulls and sunflower hulls. The downfalls with raising chickens has been very, very few. It's been a real good asset for the farm to reduce my commercial fertilizer need, and with proper management and a good stacking slab, the nutrients are very efficient and utilized very well. Every 2 months virtually, I take a portion of the manure and put it in the stacking slab. I could see right away there was a lot more value in the poultry litter and a lot more risk of leaching. I'm actually seriously considering putting up another stacking slab to put my cattle manure in. The efficiency, the quality, the consistency of the manure is so much better. You maintain the moisture, it's able to actually compost versus with an exposed manure pile. Too much rain will reduce the nitrogens to a point that you just don't get an efficient compost. Consequently, it doesn't haul as nice, it doesn't store as nice. The quality just isn't there. And I also believe without having a roof on it, the risk to the environment, if you get a lot of rain, there's that chance of flushing the nutrients where we don't want them. I want the nutrients placed where I need them, when I need them, for what I need them. If the nutrients are running from my manure pile, they're probably not where I want them. So I built the stacking slab with help from the EQIP program to help me with the cost. And I really felt that I wanted it to be covered, making certain that there's no runoff, no leaching from it, just from an overabundance of moisture.
The stacking slab, those have become real popular for chicken barns and for even cattle operations, just because most of the county has high water table soils, so we're looking the water tables within 2 feet of the surface. And so if you've got that manure sitting on the ground, you've got that stuff leaching into the ground. It's just an easier path to get into the water table. And when you're able to get it in the stacking slab, you can get a uniform, dry product. You don't have wet stuff, you don't have dry stuff. Easier for the nutrient management portion of the project. We, at the Soil and Water NRCS office, we sized it. For the roofs that we're cost sharing now, they're being built at residential snow and wind load requirements.
You did the pouring, didn't you?
Me and the kids, it was another training episode for the kids. I had somebody pour the floor. Just the walls, we did.
It's a 20-year life expectancy for the cement itself, but it should last a lot longer than that.
This half is up to a year old because last fall it was so wet I wasn't able to apply. This spring I applied at my normal rate, so I have some left over. Last year it was such a wet fall that I didn't get it spread, so I pile it right to the rafters. And then of course it composts and shrinks. I've had a good working relationship with the local folks at the NRCS. They have things they need to get done, and I have things I want to get done. Between the two of us, if we put our heads together, we're able to find solutions, some of which there is help for, some of which there's only advice for. We've had a good working relationship and we've got a lot of things accomplished. I have worked with EQIP. I've been involved with the CSP, Conservation Stewardship Program, and I am also water quality certified on my farm.
For the Minnesota Ag Water Quality Certification Program, Roy was an obvious fit when the program came about in our office just because of the things that he had done already with the strip till, the grazing, all the things that he incorporated already. Probably the biggest challenge we had to work with him on was the nutrient management, just making sure he's at recommended rates, in addition to some buffers and stuff like that that were needed.
The water quality assessment was a huge deal. I felt that I was doing a lot of things good for the soil, for the water, for the environment, and this was really a way to share that information. It's a good way to showcase what we're doing. For me, it was an easy transition because many of the things that were required for the water quality assessment were things that I had already seeked out and worked through the NRCS, looking at what I've done with drainage and with buffer strips and obviously the strip till and rotations and cover crops all play into that. And what it really is an opportunity to demonstrate what you're doing for the environment.
Conservation tillage and soil health are real important just because we want to keep everything underground here. We don't want to send that downstream. The farmers here are paying for their fertilizer. They're spending the time improving their land, and if we can keep that soil, we can keep that nutrients here instead of sending it downstream or down in the drinking water. That's a benefit for everybody.
I had a young neighbor bought a farm that I used to rent right across the road, and I was strip tilling it for many years. And when he took over the farm, he works full-time. I advised him that I thought strip till was a good way for him to be efficient, keep the soil profile where it is. He was very open to that. It's actually been fun working with somebody young, sharing what I've learned, encouraging him, and it's actually makes you feel good to be able to share something you've learned and be able to not just carry it with you to the grave.
I have a 120-acre farm. I do a 2-crop rotation, typically soybeans and corn. My next door neighbor, Roy, helped me out just a ton with getting involved with strip tilling a little bit further, helping me set it up. I did it the first year and I couldn't figure out, I still can't figure out why more people don't do it, to be honest. It's a one-time across the field and then you're planting. I think it's a great thing. It's a work saver, it's efficient. I have young kids. I want to farm, but I don't want to spend every waking moment doing it. And I think the soil health improves a lot. Within a couple of years, I think the soil changes quite a bit. I have put strips down and planted into them 3 years. For me, it's better than no-till, it's better than vertical till. I'm not working the ground to a pulp. It really works well for me, and I think it's just a great system, and I think you're gonna see a lot more guys going to it in the future. I got young kids, and I really think that it's gives them a good foundation and learning work ethic and how to take care of the land and animals and just give them good roots to start with. That's honestly the biggest reason for my farming. As much as I love it, I think my kids are going to benefit a lot from it. Working with the NRCS has been a great experience. Honestly, I work with the NRCS office with some grazing. I'm really starting to entertain some cover crop ideas, and they're really great with working with me on that. Anytime you call, they're quick to come back with an answer. If they don't know it, they're going to help you find it. It's a nice resource to be able to use.
Cover crops is an area that I'm very interested in. I've been looking into it. It's taking a little for me to get my head around it. I've used cover crops in prevented plant years. I really like what it does for the soil. I like to keep something living even if I'm a little bit late and even if it's not going to make a harvestable crop, and that's where I've been using cover crops. I would like to, and this is going to take a change of mindset for me, I would like to try in-season cover crops, which is going to require me to be a little bit less diligent with my chemical program, back off on that so I can get cover crops established in season. I have a son right now that is interested in taking over the family farm, so it's just a matter of us working through a succession plan. We have a goal to keep the family farm in the family.
If people are looking for advice, looking for help, or just need somebody to talk to, the NRCS office, the Soil and Water District are great sources for information just because they've worked with a lot of different people. We've got people all over the state that in most cases too, we can get some financial assistance to help cover some of these costs. The unique thing about Roy's operation here is he's taken a lot of this stuff and ran with it on his own, and he's been the driving force behind it. He's come to us. How can you help? What other ideas do you have? Options, advice do you have?
Working with the NRCS has been a great deal because a lot of this conservation tillage, a lot of the newer technologies, the different technologies are a challenge to implement. If you can get a little bit of guidance, a little bit of financial support for the things that, frankly, you don't always believe they're going to pay off. So with a little bit of incentive, now there's some encouragement to take a chance. You're sharing the risk with another entity, which really helps you to be able to move forward and not have to step in it so gingerly. You have a support staff with you. You have some financial resources to help you get started. It is an asset from that aspect to really give you that encouragement to move forward.